We have a tweet from Kaneko the Great, who is confused and says, hold on a minute. Kilmer Abrego Garcia's court document from 2019 says, quote, DHS has not shown there are changed circumstances in Guatemala that would result in the respondent's life not being threatened, or that internal relocation is possible and reasonable under the circumstances. Therefore, the respondent's application for withholding under the act is granted. Anybody knows what's wrong with that quote, with that paragraph, with that sentence?
No. What do you?
You haven't figured it out.
I'm not sure.
And I'm pausing not for dramatic suspense, but to point out that this document has been public since the Kilmer Abrego Garcia story started. I assumed everyone already knew this. Guatemala is the nation under the circumstances of withholding. I thought everybody knew that. And now I'm seeing a bunch of people say, wait a minute. The nation he wasn't supposed to go back to was Guatemala? He's in El Salvador. Yeah. Yes. I thought y'all knew that. I thought I don't know how this one slipped past people. Literally, we have the story from the AP. Who is Kilmer Abrego Garcia, the man ICE mistakenly deported to El Salvador prison? It's from April 18th. I can't remember which guest we had on. They mentioned a rival gang, I think it's called Barrios 18, was threatening his family in Guatemala. And so they fled. And they're from El Salvador. Yeah, so what is the argument? My assumption and understanding of this was that because the gang that operates in Guatemala and borders El Salvador was threatening his family, returning to El Salvador, he would still be unsafe from the threat in Guatemala. Now people are starting to realize, hey, wait a minute. The withholding order was for Guatemala, not El Salvador. So technically there is no administrative error at all, and there's no need for the AEA. He could have been deported back there in the first place. Now, the issue I have with that argument is, guys, there's no issue with the order of withholding at all because he's in prison. He's safe. It might be funny, but it's true. If the argument is, if you release him to the streets of El Salvador, a gang might kill him, well, we got good news. He's in prison. There's guards there. So there you go. I mean, what's the issue?
Well, kudos to the media for actually using his full name and not the Maryland Man. So,
right.
Because most people know this person by his photo and by Maryland Man. So now we actually kind of know his real name and really what he was all up to.
Do you think this was getting misreported intentionally?
Of course.
What happens is later documents, the federal government said he had a withholding to El Salvador, despite the fact that the court document references only Guatemala.
Like, what is the incentive for them to lie? Or is it just incompetence in the situation?
There's questions about this. And again, the reason why I wanted to go into this story is because a lot of people are just now reading this court document. I would just like to say this as respectful as I can. Guys, you got to read these things. Like I'm talking to you conservatives and the right. I made the mistake. It's my fault. I apologize for this in assuming that the conversations around this understood that Guatemala was the threat. When we had, I can't remember who the guest was, but they mentioned it was a rival gang that was threatening him. That's why they couldn't go back to El Salvador. The argument is, quite literally, for the withholding order, that if they go back to El Salvador, this gang, which operates in Guatemala, will come and get revenge or something. However, Nayib Bukele has cleaned up El Salvador. It is now safe, and the threat of those gangs is minimal because they don't want to go there. They'll get thrown in CCOT.
Mm-hmm.
The only real issue, once again, with this case is that he needed a USCIS interview. That's it. One guy from immigration to go, your withholding is due to gangs in El Salvador or Guatemala, I see. Okay, if we send you to El Salvador, where the crime rate is now, it's one of the safest in the Western Hemisphere, you will not face these threats. Withholding void. And then he's deported.
That's it.
End of story. Yeah.
He's also a gang member himself. And we don't want people with targets on their backs in this country if they're just luring the people who are after them to this country, and they're going to hurt other people too.
That's a good point.
And for the sake of argument, let's say that the protection order was pertaining to El Salvador. I don't care. Send him back there.
Prison.
No one is going to lose sleep over this man.
Yeah, I mean, send him anywhere. Send him to prison. Send him to
Guantanamo.
Gitmo. Send him to. It doesn't matter to me where they send him. Send him out of America. Stop making him our problem. Like when Donald Trump says that, they're not sending their best, there are a lot of countries that when they heard that the borders were open, they actually do things like empty their prisons, empty their asylums, say, go, get out of here, and kick them out of their country. And then they wind up here. That is not a fabrication. That actually happens. So the idea that we must accept the criminals of other countries because our Democrats are too spineless to actually send people back, I do not accept that. We need to send all of these people home. We need to do everything we can to put a bunch of pressure on businesses that hire these people, and the police need to wrap up as many illegal immigrants as they possibly can and send them out.
Was mandatory E-Verify even mentioned in the 2024 Trump campaign?
I don't think so.
Because that I remember
recall.
from the 2016 run.
I think they're in favor of it, but there's a lot of libertarians who oppose it. I have an honest question in this regard for you guys. What is the issue with real ID and collection of biometrics? As an honest question, it's not a gotcha. I'm genuinely curious what your thoughts are.
An issue that libertarians have with those?
No, you.
Oh.
Like, what do you think? Is it, let's just start here. So real ID, that basically means all IDs statewide are going to be in a national database. And biometrics, they're going to collect at various ports of entry, your fingerprints, retinal scans, photos, facial ID, whatever. What are your thoughts on doing that? Do you think it's good or bad?
But they already do that when you come in from outside of the United States and when you're using your passport. I think a passport essentially is a real ID. So it's like you're carrying a passport on you. So if you have
chipped.
Yeah. So if you have a passport already, they already have your data.
But already doing it, I don't think is the argument, right? Libertarians are going to complain. They shouldn't be. So my question for you guys is, are you okay with the mass collection of biometrics? No?
No, I mean, that just feels like it has ulterior motives, or maybe they'll discover ulterior motives down the line.
So the argument largely is, the reason they do it at the border is that if your biometrics are in the system and you come to the border and they scan it, be like, gotcha.
These are basically this data they can use in mass surveillance, and they already do.
But what
facial recognition?
Right. But my question is, why are you worried about mass surveillance?
I don't have a problem with it if they're doing it at the border, at ports of entry. I don't really have a problem with that. Like if you leave the country and they scan your face when you come back, even for American citizens, I don't really have that much of an issue with you or with it. I don't think that it should be done at the airport every time you get on an airplane.
But why not?
Because of things like privacy.
We deserve
issues.
privacy.
What does that mean?
You should
okay, guys. Let me try it again. You're literally just saying I don't want them to have it. I get it. I don't either. Well, I'm wondering what the negative thing from them having it is. Like, what do you guys think it is?
So I don't know that there is the ability now to monitor through facial recognition or anything like that, but you do currently have the option of not having electronics on you and going places and doing things and being private, right? So you leave your phone. Now, granted, most people don't make this decision. Most people opt to have the phone because the phone and technology.
Like you don't like if you go to a place that maybe you're going to an adult bookstore, you don't want some NSA guy to know you're doing it.
Fair enough. If that's an example, fine. But the point that I'm
like, you're doing something embarrassing, you know what I mean?
Whether it be embarrassing or you just don't want people to track you, right? So hypothetical, right? You want to go and, well, actually, you can't. I'm not really sure that there are a whole lot of things that you can do anymore that where there isn't someone tracking.
I ask this because I've come across a lot of people who they'll say, hey, it's really bad that real ID is really bad. And I'm like, I agree. I can articulate, my thoughts on real ID and mass surveillance and biometrics, but I'm genuinely curious if people what is the view the average person has on why they don't want their facial recognition or whatever in a government database. It is like, do you think the government will do something to you by being able to know who you are?
Well, it kind of just sounds like the retort of if you have nothing to hide, you don't need to worry about these encroachments on your freedom,
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying
it just kind of sounds like the argument, what could go wrong? Well, a lot of things could go wrong.
I'm not saying that either. I'm saying, what do you think?
Personally,
what do you think the government will do to you when they have your information and data?
probably use it for medical scientific experimentation, maybe cloning,
Maybe the whole
CRISPR
ancestry
technology.
Absolutely. We know that, what was that experiment they did in San Fran where they sprayed the whole city with bacteria? So if they're tracking your biometrics, if they scan everybody's eyes and load them into an AI, the AI could probably navigate cancer rates and a whole bunch of weird stuff and then use that to socially engineer. Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.